The note says recording and streaming. Is that correct or?
Or
All right. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the January 19th special meeting of the Croton-Harmon Board of Education, and I would like to call this meeting to order.
May 19th,
What did I say?
January.
Oh, May 19th. It's been a long day. Before we move on, because I will have an amendment to make to the agenda, so I wanted to make a brief statement to the community. So we did get a question from a candidate and from a member of the community who had questions regarding the trustee votes. While we respond to their questions, we will hold off on accepting the results of the trustee votes, the trustee elections, until our June 3rd meeting. So I would like to, prior to us accepting the agenda, change the, Tracy, if we could change 2.1 to say recommended action that the Board of Education accept the results of the budget vote and propositions as presented.
So moved.
well, we're not moving it yet.
Well, we haven't moved
Oh, I
it.
thought I
So
said, I thought I heard
I'm
you
just
say that there was a
adjusting
proposal.
the agenda before, so we don't have to make an amendment to it.
Oh, man.
So now we will move into 1.2, which is recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Andrea, did you second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right.
Before we move that 2.1, and you said the propositions,
Yes.
we also make sure we're including the library proposition as well.
Yes. So everything that is would be transportation propositions 1 through 4, the enhanced aid proposition, the library proposition, and the ex officio student proposition. So the budget and the propositions. Okay. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the results of the budget vote and propositions as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, and now we will move into 2.2. Recommended action that the Board of Education votes on the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association's nominating committee slate of officers and directors for 2020-2021 on the accompanying ballot as presented.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
On the question? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. And 2.3, recommended action. Resolved that the Board of Education approves the two-way New York State Public High School Athletic Association NYSPHSAA merger between Croton-Harmon UFSD, Hendrick Hudson CSD for girls swimming as presented for the 2021-2022 school year. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education approves the two-way New York State Public High School Athletic Association merger between Croton-Harmon UFSD and Peekskill City School District for boys swimming as presented for the 2021-2022 school year. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education approves the six-way New York State Public High School Athletic Association merger between Croton-Harmon UFSD, Hendrick Hudson CSD, Somers CSD, Yorktown CSD, Peekskill City Schools, and Katona Lewisboro SD for girls gymnastics as presented for the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, and so now we will move into reports, and I will turn it over to Dr. O'Connell to give us a superintendent's report.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and good evening to the Board of Education as well as our community members watching. Just a short report. I'd like to just share a few thoughts on open positions and ask Denise Harrington-Cohen if you'd like to share some information with the board and community about our Supervisor of Transportation search.
Absolutely. So we are all aware that Ms. O'Mara will be retiring in July. So I just wanted to give you an update on the Supervisor of Transportation position. This is a position that's governed by civil service guidelines. So the process is that we request the list from civil service, and then we must choose one of the top 3 candidates that have applied for the position. We have already requested this list, and we expect to receive it most likely by the end of this week or the early part of next week. At that time, we will be canvassing the list, so we will send out notification to those individuals with the job description, and once that list is canvassed, applicants will return will either inquire about the position or not. And the top 3, we have the option of choosing the top 3. At that time, we'll convene a committee that will include administrators, parents, faculty members, certainly some of our transportation staff, and hopefully board members. And we will interview for the position. And that I expect to occur, we're looking at early June. We have a requirement through civil service that within 60 days of canvassing the list or requesting the list from civil service, we need to appoint the position. So it's a very tight timeline, and that's our timeline.
Great, thank you, Denise. And it's very different, just to make sure that everybody knows when we're looking for somebody from the pedagogical side versus civil service. So thank you for clarifying that. Neil?
Yeah, question is, if we canvass the top 3 and none of them express an interest, or fewer than 3 express an interest, in each of those situations, what happens?
In those circumstances, we can go off of the list, but the individual that's appointed will be appointed provisionally. So what that means is that they will be appointed provisionally when the next test is offered. They will have the option of taking that test. If they do not pass and score in the top 3, they will have to vacate the position and we will have to rehire off of that list.
If there are, let's say, 2 people who say, I'm interested, do we then have 2 candidates that we look at?
We
one
can choose from those 2, but we do not have to. We can go off of the list. But
as you just described.
Anyone off of the list is a provisional candidate. Of course, there's also an option for a transfer. So if there's someone, an incumbent in the position currently in another district that is not on the list, they have the potential to transfer to the position as well. So we've posted the position on OLAS in addition to civil service. So if there's someone in the position now that is not actively on the list, they too would be eligible, which is why we've posted it on OLAS.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for that update. Again, a little, certainly different nuances when it's a civil service position versus some of the other administrative positions.
There's a lot less latitude.
Yes, that is true. So thank you for sharing that. Also to note, at our next Board of Education meeting, I will be recommending that Mrs. Carrie Bianchi, recommending her to a probationary elementary principal position, therefore eliminating the interim title. The second piece that I'd like to share this evening is discussion of the ESSER funds. ESSER, again, stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. As we have heard, the board has discussed, and we have certainly referenced throughout our budget discussions. Districts throughout New York State have received funds, federal funds. And Croton Harmon has also received federal funds. It's basically under three categories: ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. ESSER 1 was the CARES Act that we talked about a lot last, in the earlier months. Those funds were directed towards COVID expenditures. ESSER 2 is the CRISR Act, which is really the Corona Relief Supplement funds, which we have about $250,000. And then ESSER 3, which is the American Rescue Plan, and that's about $563,000. What's important to note are the rules, if you will, and regulations that surround the use of funds, and the fact that we want to certainly involve the board, certainly involve the community, et cetera. There's a pretty tight timeline for us to share how it is we are thinking about spending these funds. And again, it's not just a 1 year, it spans over a few years. So as an administrative team, we've been meeting. We would like community input. We will be launching a thought exchange. We're hopefully targeting the end of this week to get some community thoughts regarding spending some of the funds that we are granted through these reliefs. We are hoping to include on June 3rd, which is a scheduled board meeting, continued dialogue about the spending of the monies. On the 7th, I believe, of June, we have set a date to convene our school reentry task force, and we will have as an agenda item conversations regarding the spending of ESSER funds. And we are looking and seeking to have another board meeting, of which perhaps targeting June 10th, where we have another opportunity to speak with the board and have, an opportunity for the public to weigh in. And the reason why that's such a tight timeline is because as we learn more about the expectations of districts that are, sharing assurances on all the things we'll meet in order to gain these funds, we must file by June 15th, at least a preliminary plan which says how the district intends to use these funds. We can make amendments along the way. However, we do have a filing date of June 15th, and then we have another date of July 1 as to when we put our plan up on our website. So we are under a tight timeline, not based on our choosing, but so we are putting things in place so that we can get some community input on the use of those funds. Part of those funds, I'm going to use the words of the federal grants, if you will, and they use the terms learning loss. It's basically funds to address any of the impact that the pandemic has had on learning. And there is a prescribed percentage, 20% in the one area that we must have funds allocated to that. As the board already knows, we've been discussing this over time. We really have a nice beefed up summer program this starting this summer, and again that will be part of the plan moving forward. But Community input will most likely come through a thought exchange. We'll be leveraging our task force. We'll be having at least 2 board meetings dedicating time to this discussion. And then that should put us in a pretty good position to file by the 15th. And I just wanted to use this opportunity as our administrative team learns more about the assurances and what we must put in place for those funds. Grateful for the funds, very grateful for the funds. So we thank all of our advocates in this area, but we want to be extremely thoughtful on how we use those funds as well. Again, it's not as much as what other districts have received, but yet we are still grateful for those funds. The last thing I'd like to share in my superintendent's report tonight, I'm going to toss it over to Mr. Griffiths. And I'm very proud of the advocacy work he has done in this area. So John, I'll toss it over to you now.
Sure. I'd like to start off by really giving some notice to of the good collaborative spirit the county executive offices has had with school districts with regards to the pandemic. I've been in touch with that office. 2 people that we owe a lot of thanks to, Kyle McIntyre and Emily Saltzman over there in White Plains, who have been working with districts to provide pop-up vaccination clinics within school districts. As you could imagine, with the Pfizer vaccine now being extended downwards to ages 12 and up, there is quite an interest in having school districts host these events for their students. Through our ongoing communications with the county executive's office, we were able to secure a date. So I'm very, very happy to inform the board and the community that next Wednesday, the 26th of May, from the hours of 12 p.m. to 6 p.m., we will be hosting a session, a vaccinations session for our students. There is an interest on the part of the county executive as they're looking at the vaccination rates of surrounding communities for us to extend to the occasion, the event, to our neighbors in Montrose and Buchanan through the Henry Hudson School District. It doesn't really impact our capacity to vaccinate our own students. It just means that they will bring in more supplies and more personnel so that they can accommodate a larger population. We anticipate that for our students, we will probably have as many as 120 appointments. I will be getting a notification about registration that I will be able to get to our people before the next day or 2. It's anticipated to be taking place at Croton Harmon High School in one of our facilities, either the gymnasium or another facility, close by.
So thank you, John, for echoing the collaboration with County Executive George Latimer. I have shared this with the board. He and his team have been most gracious every Monday morning meeting with the superintendents. And he is always saying to us, how can we help? How can my office help? How can our resources help? And, it has been so comforting throughout the pandemic to have that partnership. So thank you for starting your comments off with that. Neil, I see you have a question.
One quick question. You had talked about, I believe you said the expectation would be the Pfizer vaccine.
I believe so, yes.
Yes,
Which
it
would
has to
mean
be for that
the
age group.
second dose for the Pfizer vaccine would have to be done 3 weeks later.
That's correct.
So do we have basically both dates on the schedule so that sometime, whatever day that is, on Wednesday, June 12th, I think it is?
The 3 weeks following.
So they will be back. And I guess our other question will be, in the event that children age 12 and above will be eligible by that point, which is 1 week from yesterday, 6 days from now, do we anticipate that we may have more children at the lower high school and middle school level.
Neil, do you mean
joining us.
12 and below? 12 and under, not 12 and
No.
above. 12 and above are already
Oh, okay. So
eligible.
12. Yeah. All right. Then forget it, because I don't think we're going to get to under 12 at this point. So we're talking about middle school and high school students
That's
will
is
be
correct.
correct.
eligible. Gotcha.
There
Okay.
is a stipulation still because of the pediatric nature of the 12 to 15 population that at those, for anybody that we're vaccinating in that age range, that a parent or designated adult, not a sibling, but a designated adult, will have to be present for the vaccination of any 12 to 15-year-old at the site.
Okay.
And this is hot off the press. We just found out this information. I haven't even had a chance to alert my colleagues in Hendrick-Hudson. But again, this is something we just found out this afternoon. So, that concludes my report for this evening. So thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Connell. And thank you, John, for bringing us that news. I think it's very exciting, and I'm sure a lot of our community members are going to be happy to hear that we will be able to host a clinic. So with that, we will now move into our next part of the meeting, which is Mr. Galino has joined us tonight to give us a report from the Athletic Study Council. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Galino, and I'm happy to turn it over to you right now.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, board, for inviting me this evening to share with you the work that the Athletic Study Committee has been doing going back to December. So tonight I just want to share with you some of the findings and then also some of the recommendations we'd like to make. So yes, Tracy, you want to share the screen? And
Absolutely.
okay, thank you. Okay. So I think, as we approach this report of the Athletic Study Committee, I'm representing the committee tonight to share with you some of the common conversations and themes that came up during this time period, and then also some of the recommendations. I think it's important to, when we hear about what the study is going to bring forward, is that, we're looking at an education-based athletic program. So this program is, we're striving to have a program that is not only student athletes that go and play sports or go and play games, but it's an athletic program that fosters community support, community pride, education-based athletics. You probably heard me say this many times before, that the athletic program is one of the greatest teachers of social emotional skills, just by nature of what goes on every day after school in our athletic program. So, we want to just be taking a look at it from that mindset. And we're not trying to build a program that only where kids are just, again, playing games, playing sports, but all the other positive outcomes, of sportsmanship, athleticism, but also academic achievement that comes out of an athletic program. Next, please. Okay, again, the purpose of the study, and again, the board requested that we convene an athletic study this year. And as you can see here, what we really tried to do was, objectively examine what we have in place presently in the athletic program. And what we would always do is we would take a look at what do we have here presently in Croton-Harmon, and how does that compare to or align with the standards of excellence or the best practices of what are considered successful athletic programs. And again, the emphasis is on creating an athletic program that is education-based. The United States is one of the only countries in the world where athletics is part of the educational program of a school. If you go to other countries and you want to play an athletic, you usually join a private club. So in sports in school, the goal is that we're teaching a whole lot more than just a game for kids to play. It's linked, and I think you can think of it this way. When school ends around 3 o'clock and kids move off to the athletic fields and courts and track, it's the 9th period of the day. It's a small high school functioning out there every day after school, when you consider the numbers of kids that are actually participating in our athletic program. Next. So as we started this year, these were the areas that we wanted to take a look at And to be quite honest, this year, because, I don't want to, we have a tendency to blame everything on COVID, but we really only scratched the surface in the work that we can do this year because of how we had to meet. And although we took a look at some of these, most of these, I would say, we were not able to dig into great depth with all of them. And the other thing I would say is, this year was obviously year one. This was the study year. This will continue into a year 2, 3, and potentially year 4, where we're going to actually begin in year 2 to plan out some of the recommendations and begin to implement them. But again, in a well-structured athletic program, these are some of the common things that are looked at and compared to see how your athletic program is doing. I know we spent a decent amount of time talking about mentoring and leadership among coaches and student athletes. Program philosophy was discussed, and I think, as you'll see, one of the recommendations later on, the need to really revisit the modified philosophies. Many organizational systems within the athletic program have to be redesigned, updated, or actually created for the first time. Personnel and program assessment was also another area of conversation, and we did spend some time talking about the sports medicine program. And one evening we had our athletic trainer present about the value of the athletic training program and what we have to do to push it forward and to actually enhance that program. Next, please. Now, the vision of the athletic program is what you see in front of you. It forces the goals of scholarship, sportsmanship, and athletes. A lot of times we think of an athletic program and you only think of the athletic part of it, but our athletes should be involved in community service. All our teams should be. Fostering the ideas of sportsmanship, being able to, win with honor, be able to understand that you're not always successful and you do lose sometimes. And how do you become resilient? How do you learn? How do you bounce back from that? One thing I'm proud to say is for the fall season and also for the winter season, all of our teams were selected as New York State Scholar Athlete Award winners, which is a high honor, where you have teams that are achieving a grade point average of 90 or higher. So that was a nice achievement, because we also would like to see our athletes winning academic awards as well as athletic awards. And the long-term goal is we want to have a transformational athletic program. The athletes, where they can develop the skills, their social and emotional skills, to be the best version of themselves, whatever they can be. We want them to be able to reach their potential, and as a result of this, when they leave, realize that there was something that they took away from their athletic experience. It was a positive experience, and then they're able to take it into the next phase of their life, whatever that's going to be. Next. Thank you. So one of the things we started off and we talk about, what do we want the culture of Croton Harmon athletics to look like? And I think it's important that we develop an athletic culture here that is just, specific to the Croton Harmon community. In the opening slide, you saw in white something that says culture never graduates. The point is, in an athletic, an athletic generation flips over every 4 years. You enter as a freshman, 4 years later you leave, and then the next generation comes. But once you develop an athletic culture that communicates what the athletic program is about and what it stands for, all those generations that follow, they fall into line with understanding what it means to be a Croton Harmon athlete. So some of the common things that we talked about, we discussed, was culture. Rituals are very important. Banquets, traditions, all the celebrations that we have. Now, this year very limited, but moving forward, we should be, have athletic banquets, celebrations. We should take a look at redesigning our award system, things along those lines. We spoke about branding is something that will come up a little bit later to discuss, because that has a big influence about how you go about developing the culture and actually making the school athletic programs the community's athletic programs. We talked about the necessities of having pride in yourself, pride in your school. I think school spirit is something that's very important. The necessity to increase participation rates. In many cases, we're just a couple of kids away in many sports from being able to sponsor 3 levels of a sport. So taking a look at, what can we do to increase participation levels, and then the whole idea of, the team being put above the individual. We need some continuity in the athletic program, some of the operations, the systems internally. I think what I heard a lot of times was based on the sport you play, your experience in the athletic program is going to be different. That really shouldn't be. We really should be that your experience should be the same regardless of what sports you decide to participate. Something that came up very often, many conversations, was the whole idea of transitioning kids from youth sports programs to the school programs, which would be in the 7th grade, but also transitioning between the youth programs and the school programs in general, where our coaching staff are in conversation and collaboration with the youth programs and the youth coaches, because kids that are playing youth sports right now, eventually they're going to be wearing a Tiger uniform. They're going to be playing for Croton Harmon middle school, high school. So we want to be able to start those conversations. That was a big conversation. And then the other thing is that all the teams are integrated amongst themselves. We all have a common goal, a common theme, and we all support each other. Next. Again, continuing off of slide 1, it was really strongly felt that, we need to have integrity, sportsmanship. We should always be, demonstrating positive sportsmanship during our competitions. When we win, you got to win with humility, but you also have to be resilient in losses, and learn how to bounce back and pick yourself up and continue on. And then the last piece we talked about was personal growth. Some of the things you've heard me speak about previously: social emotional skills, leadership development. Very often they say that playing athletics develops leaders. That's true. It gives them an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, but we really have to do a better job in the athletic program in actually helping kids develop skills of leadership. Well, obviously, some of the social emotional skills we also often talk about: empathy, resiliency, teamwork, and perseverance. These are some of the skills that we hope to teach and that kids take away into their life as they move past Croton Harmon High School. Next, please. So I would have to say, again, I believe we started in December. We met twice a month, and some of the and again, I tried to be a good listener. Some of the common themes are what we see here of what needs to be really addressed in the athletic program. I spoke about this already: community programs and school programs working together. Communications, communications is so important. It's not only social media communication, where we're pushing out information into the larger community about schedules and games, but also pushing out into the community results of games, being able to push out, pictures, photos of action shots from games, because there's a great need to, or great interest in having that. But also the communications of an assortment of meetings that we need to have to communicate to the community. Although websites are good, we need to put in place different meetings that and I'll speak about some of those later on in the presentation, where we're making our expectations and our standards clear, but also calendars. So, obviously Tandem, being able to get schedules out to people, that is very, very important, and something that, folks on the committee that communicated that to me clearly. I know the next one, facilities, is something that we've heard a lot about. Tracy, if you just go back one slide, please. Facilities, I'll speak a little bit more specifically about those as we move forward. The necessity to try to brand the athletic program that includes curb appeal, signage, standardization in the athletic program, but also in the district as well. Revisiting the modified philosophy in terms of trying to do some things between coaching and recruitment to build up the competitiveness of the modified program. And then the last thing we discussed, a lot of common theme, is we have to really work on not only recruiting, but also retaining really quality personnel, specifically in this case, coaches. Next, please. Okay, so let me just go into a couple. So those are some of the common themes that came out, some of the common conversations that came out. So now moving forward, just want to represent the Athletic Study Committee to make some of the recommendations to the board of some of the things that we are hopeful can begin to occur over the course of the next few years. I think, again, nothing new here, facilities. I would tell you this, from being in the athletic community of Section 1 for a very long time, I would tell you that the Spencer Sports Complex, which I like to refer to it as, could end up ultimately being one of the premier sports complexes in all of Section 1. There are so many things there that are, kind of like a diamond in the rough waiting to be developed that could create it to be, you have the potential to create like a small college atmosphere in that whole area that you have down near the Spencer Sports Complex. So obviously, I know you've heard this conversation before about a turf field. So one thing I want to say is this: I did have we realized that over the previous few years there was a turf committee that met and did a lot of work, did a lot of great work. I had an opportunity to read their reports and take a look at some of the work that they had done, and I would say that I highly endorse the work that they have done, but also the recommendations that they had made in regards to a turf field, where it should be, what it should be. So I just want to say that, really compliment that group. Great work. I agree with all the findings you came up with. But now, in addition to a turf field, if we really want to make this something that's really good quality complex, in the district, there were basically 5 tennis courts. 2 of them are clay at PVC, and for the purposes of school, cannot be used for competition. Then we have 3 tennis courts down at Spencer. The tennis program here is growing immensely. We probably, we have like 30 kids in the high school team. We have 20 on the modified team. So obviously 50 kids in the tennis program. In addition, tennis is a sport that's a lifelong sport that I know many people in the community enjoy playing tennis. We presently have 3 courts. I think, I recommend we need to take a look at adding 3 additional courts. 6 courts altogether. That is the gold standard number for tennis programs in high school, to be able to play the doubles matches and the singles matches that are called for a really great tennis program. One of the shortcomings we have is, and I think a lot of schools have this, is equipment storage. We lack it. Right now we have Connex trailers, cargo trailers, I call them, where a lot of the equipment is stored. Really not the best place for storage because of the environmental conditions inside, but creating some type of equipment storage areas, a functional concession area, working bathrooms. Now we presently use porta-johns down there at Spencer Field, but in this building we would have a meeting room, athletic trainers room, and a changing room. The athletic trainer piece is really, really, really important. As you realize that we play one sport outdoors at the high school, it's baseball. Well, our athletic program, basically, even though it comes out of the high school, it functions at Spencer. And not having a legitimate athletic training facility where the trainer can treat kids, not only for injuries, but also treat kids in terms of rehabilitation, is something that we're clearly lacking. So in the area of facilities, this is one of this assortment of the first recommendations that I'd like to make on behalf of the Athletic Study Committee. Next, please. So I really believe that, moving forward, we really need to, and I know there's a process involved in this, request for proposals and bids and things along those lines, but we don't know what we don't know about that area. In other words, when you contract with an architectural design company that is, specializes in athletic complexes and athletic facilities, when the architects come, they see things that we do not see. So, like, people would say, right, I'm sure when I just made these recommendations, where could we put 3 tennis courts? Where could we put a building? Where could we do all this? I can be quite honest, I have ideas where they could go, but architects, they see things different than we do. But they can also do, all of the feasibility studies that are going to tell us, about draining issues, draining needs. And I think the other part of it too is that, which is a really important piece, is be able to help determine, based on what you're looking to put in the Spencer Field complex, how much is that going to cost, which is obviously a very, very important thing. But I think until you start dealing with professionals in this area, we can all stand around and speculate, this is how much it would cost, and we could do this, we could do that. But once they come in, they'll actually be able to tell us what we could accomplish there. And again, as I said, what it would cost. Next. So again, mentioning this before, this is a second area of discussion of the Athletic Study Committee. There's a necessity to have a lot of meetings. So you may have seen the K-12 alert. We're going to have what's known as a Rising 7th Graders meeting, a Rising 9th Graders meeting. Prior to each athletic season, there would be a preseason meeting for high school athletes, preseason meeting for modified athletes. We would have a series of meetings that are known as an evening with the athletic director, a program that we also do, which is called Lunch with the Athletic Director. That's only for JV, junior varsity athletes. But all of these meetings should be institutionalized so people know that, okay, the first Monday of June, that's the preseason meeting for fall sports for next year. The last Monday in October, that's when we're going to have the preseason for winter sports. So these meetings are very important to communicate information. I spoke about social media. One of the things that COVID definitely brought on, and I know it accelerated it here for us, is we've entered into the world of streaming athletic contests. That will continue to a greater degree because the plan is to be able to stream athletic contests from Spencer Field next year using an actual huddle camera. Presently, we use an iPad, which really isn't that as effective. But this is just another whole piece of athletic programs, social media, putting things out on Twitter, streaming games. So that's something that we really have to take a look at. How can we go about enhancing that and making it better for the community? The necessity of calendars. We have an athletic handbook presently, but I'm not sure that it contains all of the important information that an athletic handbook should include. And again, the other thing that that people on the study committee spoke about, that community members and families in the community want is good, solid communication between the coach, their child's coach, and the family, so the families are always in the loop as to what's going on in terms of practices and camps and intramurals and any other changes that could come. So this was a big theme that came across many times. And one thing I would say that's probably always good to hear, the board's always happy to hear, is none of the things up here on the screen really cost much money. Again, as I said, the huddle camera is something that is part of a package we received from Huddle. So now it's really just a matter of installing it. And my sense is, moving forward, we would look to put cameras on some of the other fields so we have the ability to stream, all of the sports. Next, please. Branding's a big thing. I think I know people on the athletic committee heard me say this a couple of times. If you were to drive up to Croton Harmon High School, you really wouldn't be sure if there's an athletic program in the school or not. There's nothing really that speaks to that. Now when you drive up there, and I don't know if you've drawn up and you see the back of the backstop of the baseball field where the boosters have graciously put together these senior posters that we have all over our athletic complexes now. But branding is a combination of things. Many times when you brand your program, you identify certain words that identify who you are. There's a lot of curb appeal. So you'll see a lot of signage. You go onto some school campuses, you see the hurricane banners with the school logos, the school sports, things like that. That believe it or not, those things get kids excited. Builds a sense of school pride. So that's something that we really have to begin to look at. And In the report that I gave to the board, I mentioned something that's called an athletic leadership council and an athletic advisory council. Working on the branding and the sense of pride and school spirit, that would be some of the work of those two committees. To be quite honest, starting right in September next year, moving forward. Activewear. Once you have your standardized logos for your athletic garments, then you're able to, there was some conversation, I know at Boosters, we're talking about opening up an active, athletic, garments like sweatshirts, t-shirts, collared shirts. Now, not the uniforms kids wear, but things families and people in the community can buy. That program has been successful when you go into any place in downtown Croton Harmon, into the stores, into the shops, and you see folks that are wearing this active wear, and their kids don't even go to school here anymore, or their kids have not started to go to school here. But it's kind of out in the community. People are proud to say, I'm a Croton Harmon Tiger, and that's one of the ways that you do it. And again, the branding program, it does define the athletic program as to what you are and what you stand for. Next, please. So this was something that came through very clearly many times, but the first meeting is that there's a feel that we really have to do a better job of the school programs and the community youth programs working together. So that can involve a lot of things where, the school programs, we're running special events. We're inviting kids to special events. Some of our coaches have done this. Some of our coaches are starting to do this. Where they hold like some clinics for some younger kids. They invite them up to the high school to, or with the Spencer to watch the team practice. They supervise the kids in drills. It's really important to do that and work between the school programs and the community programs. And I think right now, as I said, there's some areas of strength there where some programs are doing it. There's others where they're not doing it at all. But the whole idea is to standardize this across the athletic program so everyone is doing this. I think it's important that our athletic programs get involved, all of them get involved in some form of community service, because it's just something that's important. It's a key skill that they need to develop. And the kids that actually get involved in community service, they get so much more out of it than the actual service that they're providing to the community. So this is something that we feel moving forward is important. We got to do a better job of the high school athletes and the middle school athletes. They can't practice with each other. They're not allowed to, but just collaborating where, a high school team is maybe going to come down to a modified practice and run some drills. The modified kids are going to come to the high school and watch the high school team practice. The high school coach is going to come and speak to the modified athletes. The high school students are going to come talk to the modified athletes. You got to put an emphasis on making the modified program more important. And the next thing is an athletic leadership council that would be involved in trying to foster a lot of this work that we're talking about, the liaison between the community program and the school program. Next, please. I've mentioned this a couple of times. We have a present philosophy in place right now for modified, but there's a feeling that we should revisit it, and the thought of trying to look at different ways that we can make the modified program more competitive. Again, as I mentioned previously, we want to coordinate it where the high school program, so the high school coach, high school athletes, they're a little bit more involved in speaking to modified athletes about the value of athletics, about becoming playing in high school. And then I think we just have to do just a better job of trying to recruit kids to play modified sports. The feedback I received is that in some cases, especially kids when they're entering the 7th grade, they may not even know it's available for them to participate and play. So one of the ideas behind this Rising 7th grade presentation that we're going to do next week actually kind of speaks to that, of trying to make everyone aware of these are the opportunities that you have when you come to the middle school. And, these are some of the components of what's involved in you becoming an athlete. Next, please. This is a biggie. I mean, the experience an athlete is going to have, you can have a really great organized athletic program, but an athlete's experience is going to be very, very closely based on who their coach is. And, we've spoken about this a lot, but we need to seek out and continue to develop the transformational skills of coaches, where coaches really understand that they're out there teaching more than a sport. They're helping kids grow up. They're teaching those social emotional skills that we've spoke about. So this is something that we have to continue to work at. I know that, and one of the other bullet points is, and these are both related, but creating an evaluation system. We presently have, I guess, a system that has been used for a while to evaluate coaches. It's not really the most effective system. So I think when we take a look at transformational coaching and the evaluation system, that's some of the work that should take place in the summer, is actually creating an evaluation system that not only evaluates a coach's knowledge of the sport, but evaluates a coach's knowledge of how they create a team culture, which is very important. Again, when I keep saying emphasis on the modified level, is actually trying to recruit stronger coaches to coach at the modified level. Coaches that are really good at teaching skills, skill development at that level, and motivating kids, and to want to continue to play in high school. We really need to also, through the evaluation system of coaches, come up with a better professional development plan for them. Coaches, like teachers, should be professionally developing themselves every year, and we have to do something. We have to support them in that mission. A lot of times, we hire new coaches. The reality of it, and sometimes it could be their first coaching job. We really need to have in place a formal mentoring program to help new coaches when they come here to begin to understand what the culture is, but also having somebody that they can go to help them with any kind of questions or issues that they may have in the coaching. We have to put together a pre-service training program for coaches. So it shouldn't just be, you're hired, here's the whistle. Now, not that coaches use whistles anymore and go out and coach, but it's, there's a pre-service training program you have to go through, besides all the stuff you got to do for coaching certification, to really prepare you to coach. And the other big thing also, we lack professional space for coaches. If you're an out-of-district coach, there's absolutely no place for you to go where you have computer space or a file cabinet for paper files, where you can meet with kids, where you can meet with parents, who whatever. Presently, believe it or not, one section of the locker room is used for that reason, and that's for that purpose, and that's really ineffective use of space. So we really need to look at some kind of professional space. I've met with Laura Duback, high school principal, and we've identified a spot, but it's just a matter of converting it at this time. Next, please. So next, let's talk a little bit about the athletic director. As you know, we will be pursuing a new athletic director to start hopefully in July. And in conversation about this, we had a one of the sessions, we had a good conversation about what we would be looking for in the next athletic director, and I think it came across clear that we have to have a philosophy of what we are looking for. It's not a matter of asking these candidates, what is your philosophy? But it's a matter of having, this is our philosophy, and we want to see, do you fit what we're looking for? So just as we've spoke about transformational coaching, we need an athletic director that's going to come here that's has that whole philosophy that supports that of how the athletic program should run, because their decisions are going to obviously have a big effect on how the programs run. So if their philosophy is in alignment with this, then that would be a positive thing. We have to understand that the director of physical education and athletics, they're actually a district level leader. I need to be quite honest with you. The way the position is set up presently, at best, the athletic director could be a manager. That's all they are. They can just manage. They can't lead. They can't be a visionary, and they can't take you into the future, because they just, like, so many things that are placed upon them that they become responsible for. And the reality of it is, when you become responsible for all these different management type of tasks, somewhere along the line, a ball's going to get dropped here or there. So you got to look at it as like the person that comes, you really want them to be a visionary. When they come to work every day, their thing has to be, where do we want to be 5 years from now? Not like, oh, I got to make sure we have officials today for the lacrosse game. That's not what they should be kind of being involved when, if you really want to push the athletic program forward. The new athletic director, when they come, I think they really need to have, some solid pre-service training, but, pretty much two kinds. The pre-service training about all of the systems of the Croton Harmon School District. So, your budget system, your evaluation system, get actual formalized training so they clearly, feel confident in their ability to manage and manipulate those systems to understand how they work. I think you also need to have some kind of formal mentoring for that person when they come in here, because just like myself, my first year here, my only year here, every season I saw and I learned new things. And even though I was an experienced athletic director, the way things are done here are different from other places. So, that first year for the new athletic director, it's going to be a learning year. It's going to be a learning curve. They're going to do a lot of observation, but it's great to be able to have a person to fall back to that can kind of lead them along the way and give them some actual formal mentoring. And then we also have to get some really solid training for the athletic support personnel. That includes the athletic secretary, and if we move forward with the event coordinator, the event supervisor position, we need to also get that individual some solid training so they're able to deliver the service daily that they're supposed to be. So just a couple of thoughts about the athletic director position. And Tracy, next slide, please. And any questions and discussions? Thank you for listening.
Thank
I'm
you
sure
very
the
much,
board
Michael.
has many questions and would like to continue the discussion. But prior to that, Mike, I just want to thank you so much for leading the work of the Athletic Study Council, and thank the members of the Athletic Study Council immensely. But this is exactly what we were hoping for, to receive very targeted feedback this year, and to have you leading the charge, Mike. Thank you very, very much. So that's enough from me. I'm sure the board has questions or would like to deepen the discussion, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you to the many hours the Athletic Study Council has spent to bring us to this point.
Thank you. I'd like to say is the athletic study committee meetings, they were probably one of the only meetings here I actually look forward to. So it was always good to sign in on those Tuesday nights to have these conversations, because they were very good. Not to say I don't enjoy the administrative council.
I was just going to say that, Mike, but I will hold off on that when tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so any questions? Yes.
Oh, I do. Yes, absolutely. So I really appreciate all this work that you and the council have done, the committee. What it sort of sounds to me, and I'm not trying to simplify it too much, but we need to hire athletic director plus people under the athletic director plus better coaches plus get a whole new system of fields and facilities. Is there? I mean, and I think those are possible, but is there a guide for how to do this and in what order and that kind of thing? Like, I wouldn't, it's overwhelming to me. And so.
Yeah, what I would say, start with, let's excuse me, let's start with coaches. You have a lot of fine coaches here. I mean, you really, really do. It's like any organization, it's like any system. There are some folks that need support to, to help them become a better coach. There are some coaches that, after a period of time of trying, maybe it's maybe it's time for them to go. But I would say, getting into my third season here, that we have a lot of really, really good coaches. I think, all they're looking for, some support. I know we spoke about professional development. I think a lot of them are interested in that. So that's a good place. As much as the facilities go, okay, I think the blueprint for the facilities will be once we identify some kind of design architect and, explain to us what we need to do, how we're going to do it. The funding piece obviously is big, but that's something that, again, this I've been involved in these before, like building bonds for athletics. And when you really get a good firm and you work with them, they have all the questions. They ask you for the, they come to you for the answers, but they kind of carry the ball over the goal line for you. So I think that it's the answer to that piece. The systems, and I mentioned this to the athletic study committee, the systems, that's a lot of summer work. What it is, it's a lot of taking some of the documents we presently have and either updating them or making them stronger in a sense, or in some cases, a few documents we don't have that need to be developed or designed. So, and again, once you have those, the other piece is communicating it to all the stakeholders that are going to be involved in it. And then also in some cases, actually practicing some of those. So I think that's the direction that we're going to go. Again, year one, we just did a lot of studying. Now the work actually starts, year 2 and 3. And, but it's definitely manageable. There's no doubt about that.
And to follow up on that, does the athletic director hire, is that the first thing we need to do? And then the athletic director guides us through all of the other stuff? Is that kind of the?
I think obviously the hiring of the athletic director is something that's important, and it's a person that you want to get into the position as soon as possible. But I think the piece that's mentioned, the mentoring program is important. The transition piece is important to be with that person to kind of move them to the next steps. Because here's the thing that's difficult, and I would say this is that, I'm an experienced athletic director, a lot of years of experience, and there was no way I was able to develop all this. At some point in time, I just made the realization we're not going to be able to develop a lot of things because it's, in terms of being able to the daily just running of the program. So the thing is that having somebody to support the athletic director that can help with creating these documents, updating them. Some of the stuff can also be, I don't want to say outsourced, but delegated. So some of the documents are going to be worked on by the athletic trainer. I know I've met with the security consultants of the district. They're going to work on looking at the emergency action plans. The handbooks. Those can be updated with committees of coaches. So I would say once you have the athletic director in place, and I strongly advise that athletic director put together an entry plan of what their entry plan is going to be, and meeting with board members, school administrators, coaches, transportation facilities, and kind of putting together their plan moving forward. So obviously the athletic director is a key person in this whole mission as we move forward.
Thank you. I think Neil has a question.
Hi, Neil. Hi.
Hi. Actually, I first would start off by saying exactly what Brian said. This is overwhelming. But I think it sounds to me from what you've said is that, Mike, the first thing that I want to kind of focus on is a question of the philosophy of the district and how athletics fits into the philosophy of the district. I mean, and I'm thinking about this in terms of, just as one example, modified sports. Well, we've always said modified sports is in the middle school as a time for students to explore clubs and sports and decide what they're interested in and passionate about. And even in the high school, because we are a small high school and we have students who are involved in a lot of different areas, whether they are clubs or music or art or theater and also athletics. It's kind of how students learn to decide what's most important. So philosophically as a district, and then for each of our students, we need to know how we can help them make those decisions so we can have an athletic program where people who want to be invested, I'm talking students, will be invested. We also have, and that goes to the philosophy, if you will, as I said, of Modify. You also talked about communications and integration, which I think is very important. And back, I think it was 15, 16 years ago, we had a retired athletic director who came in and looked and talked in terms of integration between the different programs, said, yes, that is something we should be working on. But it's very hard when at the beginning of that process, you don't have necessarily students who are committed to a particular sport because they are exploring. So we need to figure out how that's going to work, and how we can inculcate that. And then, that goes to communication, and also communication to the different parts of our community, to faculty and staff, and to community members, parents and non-parents. I agree, Mike, totally with the idea of branding and pride in our athletic, our athletes and our teams is something that is really lacking in our community. You talk to, quote, old Croton, people, a lot of people reminisce about that. I'd love to see that again. But, we also, and this is part of what we talk about, would like to draw more people to our plays and to our concerts and to our other activities to celebrate our students. All of that goes together. There's a lot to talk about in terms of resources, facilities, fields, et cetera, money that's going to take. But I think my feeling is philosophy comes first. When we're looking at an athletic director to fill that position, I think you want to provide that athletic director with the space, I will call it, to be able to become a leader. You're right, take away some of the, the scut work of being a manager. But I see them as helping us develop our philosophy based on what we talk about. We can't, say we're not fully formed enough to be able to tell the athletic director, this is what we want. I think it's a combination of us saying what we want and that new athletic director telling us what we can accomplish as an educator within all of these complexities that I've described. There are probably a lot of other things I could get into, but that's kind of my initial impression. And I don't think it's a discussion that's going to end up, in a half hour. I think it's going to be a discussion among us that's going to end up in a number of discussions and meetings in the future.
Yeah, you got a lot of questions there, but what I would say is, all the pieces you throw out are important, and there's solutions to them. The thing I'd also say is that typically, based on where the district is right now, the work of the athletic study committee and the recommendations, and again, I'll go back to money's a big piece, especially for the facilities, is that you're probably looking at 4 years where you can kind of like turn the system over and put it or have it where, based on the conversations we had in athletic study and just things I hear from coaches and people in the community where we want it to be. So it's a long process, and it's a step-by-step process. And yes, the new athletic director is definitely going to be the person steering the ship. So that's why getting the right person is critical. Absolutely.
Iris?
So, Mike, to be honest, what Neil was saying actually highlights to me some of the some of my concerns, which is philosophy. And I really would like to throw it back to you because I've heard you speak at the committee about philosophy. I sometimes feel like our district, the philosophy is unclear. Neil just said the philosophy of modified is for exploration. Is that something you would say is the purpose of the philosophy that should be the underpinning of a modified program? Because when you were speaking, what I heard was we want to raise the bar. We want to create a we want to make the athletic department aspirational for our students, someplace where they aspire to come to. It was very big and very daunting, as my fellow board members have mentioned, but it was very aspirational. And I think the philosophy, because what I struggle with and what I've seen in Croton is there are a lot of different philosophies. And if every philosophy, if we never sit down and say,
What it is.
this is the philosophy, our philosophy for our athletic program will be X. You know, some parents say we want a winning program. Some parents will say we want everyone to play. Some parents will say, and I don't mean parents, but some people will say, no, we want everyone to have exploration. We want to make sure all the programs have equal access and equal opportunities. It can be very difficult, I would think, for someone to lead and for others to follow when you have this sort of a disconnect, at least in my vision.
Yeah, in terms of talking to the philosophy of modified, is that you probably heard me say this many times before about talent being highly overrated. And what I mean by that is we have to have some standards and expectations of modified athletes. And they're really simple. You have to come to practice every single day. And when you come to practice, whatever that, it's an hour and a half, it's 2 hours, okay? It has to be focused practice. You have to work for it. So it's not a matter of like excluding somebody necessarily because of, let's say, athletic talent. Because the reality of it is, if you come to practice every day and you work hard and you have a structured coach, you will get better. You'll become a better athlete. Again, are you going to go to the Olympics? I don't know, but you're going to be able to be part of a team structure that will be competitive. So, what we're really, when we're talking about, so the philosophy is basically that. The philosophy is that you're going to make a commitment to the team. You're going to, your teammates, you're going to come, you commit that I'm going to come to practice every day. When I come to practice, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be, part of the team. I'm going to develop my skills, things along those lines. And again, and that's part of the whole transformational philosophy, is that if you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. And the reality of it, you'll be very surprised to see how all of a sudden when people, they buy into that philosophy, shortly after that, all of a sudden you'll begin to notice that the win-loss records, there's a lot more wins than there are losses. And it's doesn't, again, a lot of it just has to be the commitment to hard work, perseverance, and and basically being there. So I think that's part of what, when we're talking about middle school philosophy, that's what we want, because we want the middle school programs to be competitive, not just like not in the phys ed model. Physical education's at the bottom. Everybody has to take physical education. It's required. Then you have an intramural program. That's where you have kids that I like a specific sport, but I don't necessarily want to be on a team and be committed to be on a team. That's what intramurals is for. A team is for kids like, hey, I really like this sport. I really want to commit. I want to really become better. I want to be part of a competitive team. So that's kind of like what the phys ed model is. So I think if we're taking a look at the philosophy, that's part of that transformational philosophy, which would also be the big part of the philosophy in the high school program as well, because the ideas are different. Just the level of play is at a higher level.
So would you say those are the best practices that you mentioned at the beginning?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
our philosophy, you would say we should align our philosophy around the best practices, which would be highlighting those skill development for our students. And so when we're looking for a new athletic director, that sort of core that we're going to be searching for.
Right, yeah. Mhm. And again, quite honestly, the best practice presently that you're going to find in education-based athletics program is the whole transformational coaching philosophy. A person by the name of Joe Ehrman is the person that made it very popular in the United States. So it's really the philosophy of many successful coaches, but it's also the philosophy of many successful athletic directors. The whole idea behind some of the things I just mentioned. Creating opportunities for kids to participate. But again, we have standards, we have expectations of what you do, how you represent yourself, how you represent the school. So that's also another part of it too. It's not only about athleticism. It's about some of these other components. You have to be a good role model. You have to be a good student. All of these things are all part of the whole idea. So when you have an athletic director that you're looking to hire, in their conversations, we also want to hear them speak about scholar athletes, not just athletics. We want to hear them speak about, the need to have, sportsmanship, the pride of sportsmanship, something I've mentioned a couple of times. So those are all some of the key things that we're looking for in terms of, who's going to come here and, take us to the next, the next step, the next level.
And can you just talk a little bit about how that interconnects with the coaches on the coaches side? Like, how does best practices look from the coaches side in terms of when we're the athletic director, how they should be supporting the coaches so that the coaches can support the students? Like, what's that connection look?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that, just like for this coming fall and this coming winter, we're always going to be hiring new coaches. I mean, when you look to hire a new coach, you're in the conversation you have with them, you want to see, want to be able to determine what is their philosophy. Are they that transformational coach you're actually looking for? So those are the folks that, we're going to try to seek out. In terms of the coaching staff that we presently have, yeah. I mean, I think whoever the athletic director, if they're a good leader, and they interact with coaches, they have conversations with coaches, focus groups with them, they'll help to raise the bar in that regard of them being able to kind of think about this style of coaching. Again, I just want to say something is that we have a lot of really good coaches here that actually, whether they know it or not, they are transformational coaches. They may not identify themselves as that, but just me watching them coach again, and it's a lot of it is how they talk to kids. It's not like they're X's and O's. It's like, a lot of times if you see me, I'm just standing there and I'm just really listening to what the coach is saying to kids, like during the game, in practice, on the sideline, because that's really a big piece of that transformational. And it's also after practice is over, the time they spend with kids when they don't have to spend time with kids. That's another, kind of a barometer that you see about coaches. And it's also true about teachers too. But in this case, we're talking about coaches. So those are all some of the indicators that you see. And I think the important thing is that very little of my conversation has anything to do with a sport. It really does not. Okay, because the transformational coaching philosophy transcends every sport. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're coaching. Okay, your sport is kind of like your modality of what you use to teach transformational, coach. That's all it really is. Like, this person's coaching basketball, well, this person's coaching soccer. That's the sport they coach, but that's the method that they use to get the kids to be able to teach all these other things that we're looking for in really good coaches. And the key that's really the key to success of a coach. I have to be quite honest. I've worked with coaches in the past that did not have successful win-loss records, but when you did exit interviews with the kids that played for them, they would tell you that was the greatest coaching experience I had in high school. And so I think that's something that really speaks to a coach's ability. Yes. Joshua?
Go ahead, Josh.
Muted. So, a question popped into my mind. I don't remember who said it. It might have been you or might have been one of the board members about remembering how Croton used to be.
Was it me?
Right. And I kind of, it got me to wondering whether the quality or success rate of our teams declined, or did it stay constant when other school districts upped their game over the course of the years? And I mean, are we still playing a 1980s or 1990s game when the other districts around us are playing a 2021 game? And, or is it that we are playing a 2021 game, but we're just not doing it very well? There's a sort of a fundamental difference. And I think it's something we maybe want to think about a little bit. Is it, did we take our eye off I'm sorry to borrow a cliche. Did we take our eye off the ball on this? Were we looking at something else? Or is it that we didn't execute it very well, or perhaps we didn't invest enough, or we had structural changes? I don't know that there's an answer to that question.
Joshua, I can weigh in on that a little bit. Again, I've only been in Croton in a limited amount of time, but I would say is that when you look at programs that are successful, and I don't mean like you always have a school that they're successful in one or two sports. When I take a look at the schools in Section 1 that are successful across the board in everything, okay, what you do is as soon as you drive onto their campus and you walk around, their core value speaks to the fact that, hey, you know what, athletics are really important here. Nobody even has to say it to you. You just walk around and you see it. And part of that is the facility. Part of that is the branding. Another big thing that I haven't spoken about, and it kind of goes back to the philosophy of coming to practice every day, working hard, is that, we really need to upgrade our training facilities for kids. Because what's happened now is that, strength and conditioning, speed training, nutrition education, all this kind of stuff has occurred in other places. And I know for a fact, you go to other schools and like, who's bringing in like, a guest speaker that's going to be, a face-off expert in lacrosse, or like a goalie expert going to come and speak, going to be there for a day, going to be a guest speaker. No different than when you're doing classes with students in the academic world. You bring in a guest speaker, so-called expert in the area, that are going to like work with kids. So there's so many layers, summer camps, things like that. There's so many layers when you take a look at these schools that are successful across the boards. There are some things that definitely separate them. And again, I know I say this all the time. Where you're born, you're not born a better athlete because where you were born. You're born in a place where you have a very well-developed, successful athletic program. So you're born there, you enter into the program, and they're pretty much follow our lead, and you're going to become part of the winning culture that is here. And we'll just kind of keep moving forward. So I think that's the key thing. In that in my short amount of time here, I think we've fallen behind some of these other districts in terms of where they've taken their game to, like, let's say, the next level in some areas.
Mm-hmm. So that sort of leads me to some other thoughts. So there's this. That's the philosophical. It gets us back to this philosophical question of, do we place the emphasis on athletics in the mindset within our schools? Is the focus entirely let's face it, in large part in our district, the focus is largely academic, right? And we don't really see much, as you say, we don't really see much of the athletic focus when you walk into a school building. Or when we talk about this, it's not what we talk about first in general. We talk about the profile of the graduate and, college and career readiness and things like that, right? And we don't tend to talk about athletics as much. So that's the sort of the philosophical. But once we decide that, if we decide that we're going to make a major change in our thought process around our athletic program, then there's three other parts that come into it. There's an organizational part, which is how do we change the way our organization is set up to make it happen? And that's something that probably doesn't cost very much. That's more about, process and procedure, right? And then there's an operational part, which is, like having the staff that you need, having the coaches that you need, which you might end up spending a little more money on. And that part is something that is, that's general fund. That's something that has to come out of budget, right? You're going to have to, if you're going to have trainers, well, then you need to have to pay to have trainers. You're going to need to pay those people. And then there's a capital part, which is like the turf field and the facilities down at the Spencer complex and things like that, and training rooms and changing rooms and a concession. And that's something that you can go out to the public for a bond on, right? Actually, I think I got those out of order. I think I probably wanted to talk about capital first and then operational. But the reason I sort of set this forth is because at some point we're going to need to ask our community to make this possible. And that means part of that is asking for, frankly, changes in how we allocate money within our budget to make it possible, and significant additional bonding to make it possible. Significant additional bonding. We're talking about building whole new buildings here, right?
That's correct, Josh.
Yeah, and that is a significant thing. And
Yes.
and my point, to bring it back around to the beginning, is that if we're going to do that, we need to have a very deep conversation about, is that what we want Croton to be? Do we want Croton to be the school district where people come in and see, aha, this is where all the top athletes are. This is where athletics are big, and it's the first thing I see. I see it right when I come into the building. Or perhaps, do you want to see, this is our Hall of Distinguished Graduates, and this is what they've accomplished in their life post-graduation. And this is what we're doing academically. These are both important. Now, I do not want to construe this as an academics versus athletics. It's a balanced question, right? We want our students to be involved in athletics because, yes, they learn teamwork. Yes, they learn the social and emotional skills. And yes, they learn how to be healthier, physically healthier adults, right? I think it's important. And we don't have any other real system that a lot of kids get to access. Yes, there's club teams out there and all that, but that doesn't affect enough kids, right? But at the same time, we need to set that balance. How do we find that balance? I think to my mind, that's the biggest question is, I've walked into plenty of school buildings where you walk in and all you see is what's happening in sports and you have no idea what's going on in academics. And I've walked into plenty of other school buildings where it's the exact opposite, where sports are, soft pedaled and it's the academics out in the front. So I think we really need to think about that carefully. And then that's going to drive how we go about doing this. If we can do it in a way that they work together, that it's absolutely worthwhile.
I was going to respond to a couple of things you mentioned there, Joshua, is that let's go back to what are considered the best overall athletic programs in Section 1. If we start listing the schools, they're also considered some of the best academic schools in Section 1 as well, in terms of, all the good things they do academically APs, SAT scores, where kids go to college, so on and so forth. And many of them, I also know, can boast a very, very successful theater program as well, which is I think, I think that's what, again, I'm just only here for a couple of months, but I think that's what communities want, a system where you're getting a great academic education, you have a really successful athletic program, you have a really successful theater program. I think when you can offer, I don't want to say it's like a product like that, I think that's what many people are happy, because you know what? Yeah, my kid doesn't play sports, but they like theater, they like music, and there's a really successful thing there. And I think the other thing also with athletics is how we structure the athletic program. In other words, the athletic program isn't only about hoisting banners to the roof in the gym. It's about winning, scholar athlete awards. It's about winning, the golden dozen in football. It's about, the Diamond Nine award. We want to push that out as much as say the Con Ed award. Hey, you know what? Our athletes, not only did we win the league meet and this person made all section, but we had 10 of our 12 teams were New York State scholar athletes. We had 2 kids won the Con Ed award this year. I think that's the other piece. And the other piece also is that the whole thing of kids giving back to the community, doing, community service work and there's many things you can do with that. So I think it's how you structure the success of the athletic program. And the success is not just championships. The success is just all those other components. That's what we said in the beginning: academic, athletic, and sportsmanship. I think that's the direction that's the path of we want to take the athletic program down.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah, did you want to add?
Well, yeah, I was just sort of a lot of what Mike just said. I think, to me, it doesn't. To me, I don't see it as being an either or prospect, and I think a lot of what Mr. Galino spoke of tonight, and a lot of what the Athletic Study Council looked at and really spent some time deliberating, was finding that balance and really, incorporating athletics and scholar athletes and all of the other parts of an athletic department outside of just the pure sports that really integrate in with our profile of a graduate, integrate in with how we are helping our kids, and shaping them to be able to be, productive members of society and people who are creative and critical thinkers. And I think athletics works really well into that. And to me, I just want to, I want to make sure that it seems that our next steps are, as a board and as a district, are really to be looking at the athletic director position. And as you said, looking at what we can do to, find that right person who can work with our coaches to help support them, to help what we can do to help maybe get that extra training that we need. And that can start the process. And then we can move into the things like the sports complex and the things like that, because I think all of the, I don't want to forget those. But I think, if we start out with what our immediate needs are and how we do that and how we are successful, we want to make sure that we are attracting and we're bringing in an athletic director who is committed to helping us build and shape and grow that program, and who's committed to sort of being in it for the long haul. And if that means that some of the things that have maybe hampered prior athletic directors, those day-to-day managerial aspects that you were talking about, if we need to look at that and make those decisions now as to how that sort of filters out so that we can provide that person with the best chance of success. That's just my thought.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
So, Mike, I know we have talked about, next year in terms of position, and I know you have been very clear that the direction for the district should certainly be to be hiring not an interim, but somebody for the position. And we've talked at great length about our future posting And I know that you have reviewed and worked with us on that. And most in, taking the work of the Athletic Study Committee, definitely including language such as the ideal candidate is a transformational leader. They will center their role as a director on the development of character by building a culture where winning is not the focus, but rather a byproduct of the skills athletes develop to reach their full potential on and off the field. So that is certainly language that, again, Mike has spent time with us on developing. Of course, other language such as a candidate must have proven ability to work collaboratively and other things, but we wanted to make sure that we captured that piece for the posting. So if the board is okay with me expanding on that a little bit, I think I gave my hard copy to Neil last night. So John, I might have to rely on you here. But we are looking to seize the moment where we post for this position. Again, a director of health, wellness, physical education, and athletics. And then with a timeline that perhaps would position us well for July start. So John, would you just do a summary of that so the board can hear the thinking there? And again, just to be clear, this is all with us working with Mike to avail ourselves of his expertise. So, John?
Sure. So here we are today, really concretizing, what we would want to put into a posting, to prepare a posting that would go up for 10 days starting on May 21st and continuing through May 31st. During that posting period, it is customary that my department begins to review resumes and prepare for the screening of applicants, which would happen from June 1st through June 4th. The screening of applications then traditionally leads into advisory committee interviews, which we would like to slate for June 8th. Following advisory committees, we usually narrow down the field of candidates, do our reference checks. It is also customary that we want to see our finalists in action in some kind of a problems of practice. We have that scheduled for June 11th. We would be asking the board if they would have availability on or around June 15th for a board level interview, so that we would be ready to have an appointment at the board's June 17th meeting. And then pending any obligations that finalist would have with their current employer, we would look for a start date as soon as possible, July 1st, or if they needed to have an extended notice time, perhaps July 15th.
And before I open up to any questions the board might have on that, Mike has been part of the process of developing that timeline with us. And he will also be part of the review of resumes, screening interviews, et cetera. So Mike has graciously availed himself to be working with us as we go through that process as well. So any questions or thoughts the board has on what we've just shared? Thank you, John.
The only thing I want to say, Debbie, is not with John. Everything he said is fine. I don't sleep anyway. But Debbie, with respect to the snippet that you read on the job description or qualifications
for the posting,
for the posting, I think that really connects with the findings that Mike spoke about, that it certainly supports the direction that the Athletic Study Task Force Committee Council, I don't know what it's called anymore.
I think I've called it a few things, so I apologize.
It definitely lines up with the direction that they we're imploring the district to consider to go in with athletics. I do believe that the profile of the graduate is reflective in the image that Mike has demonstrated to us the athletic department can hold or put forward. So for me, I'm in agreement with it, and I support going in that direction. I think it's I think to answer to John's question, I think we may have let it slip, and so now it's a good time to catch up.
Thank you for that feedback. And again, you know, I want to be very clear. It was very important for us, and I thank Mike for accelerating the timeline for the report. We were slated for June 3rd to hear the work of the Athletic Study Committee, and then I asked him to accelerate it, give us, you know, drafts early on so we could be wrapping our heads around the good work of the committee, and then work with Mike to, you know, make sure that we captured that. So thank you.
I just wanted to add, I have been thinking a lot about what Josh was saying, and I'm agreeing with all our timelines and recommendations and all that. But I feel that it's really important that we count on all our administrators to really make sure that there is that balance, because we are looking at just from the lens of athletics. This is the best things for athletics. It's the best thing for kids who are interested in athletics. But we've always been a district that does make that balance happen between not just academics, which I definitely see that role in athletics, but also with the arts and other kinds of social action activities. And I was thinking, you know, we have the athletic director to look after the athletics, but it's really up to our principals and our other administrators to really keep an eye on the other balance. I mean, there's always needs, and just finding, I think one of the things I'm proudest of Croton is that we do tend to strike that balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thank everybody for their work, but we don't want it to end up in a silo.
It's not about one versus another. And I did hear that this evening. It's not an or. But what I did hear, I mean, you know, my personal reflection and takeaway, it is about the pride we have. It's the pride we have in our athletic program. It's the pride we have in our theater program. This weekend, Saturday night, PVC blew my mind with the skits our students wrote themselves and performed in an outdoor theater. Incredible, as well as the live streaming event of Carousel. So you're right, Andrea and Josh, it's about pride, and it's about the pride we feel as adults. It's the and the connections we have to our schools, our district. It's the pride our students need to feel in their school, in their programs, etc. And to do what the Athletic Study Council has done this year regarding this one facet, I mean, it's an incredible process that you're right, we need to expand upon and look at in other areas. So again, that we in Croton Harmon have pride in what it is we're connected with. And I think, you know, I know you use the words, this was overwhelming. When you hear the work of the Athletic Study Committee, personally, I was looking at it with excitement and through the lens of opportunity. So, you know, I'm going to flip it a little bit, because I didn't feel overwhelmed when Mike was reviewing all facets of the report with me. I had just the opposite feeling. And, you know, I've talked to you about the Spencer Athletic Complex just a few times. That it's opportunity knocking on our door. Any other questions or comments as we're about to take this next step?
Josh?
I really love what you said about pride in general, pride in all the aspects of what we do in Croton. And I would really like to see that again. I mean, I remember the day when the top, I mean, this has changed. It's not as much the case as it once was, but that scholar athlete was what we were so proud of.
Mhm.
And I don't think we see it quite as much as we used to. I would love to see that, and I would love to see the scholar athlete dramatist combinations, all these combinations of kids who are doing different things in different ways, and finding their calling.
And I'm sorry, but just to add to that is, so pride is a very important word, but the other key word that I've been hearing over and over again is transformational.
Yes.
And these are all different routes towards transformation. And again, one thing is we really look at each child in our district. So I'm very excited that we're looking at all these different paths and these new ways of transforming opportunities for our students.
And for me, again, just a personal reflection, you know, just because we examine something and dig deeply and look at something and pick up rocks and look underneath them, that to me is a sign of a healthy organization, that you're not afraid to look at something. You're not afraid to uncover something. You're not afraid to say, this is a good next step. And that doesn't mean, again, one person's opinion, that something was bad before it. It just means that you don't settle with where you are, that you're constantly questioning and you're constantly saying, what else can I do to either become a better self or for the program to become a better program? And it does not mean a negative of what went before. Again, just one person's opinion, but that means you're brave. And that means you're brave to take that next step. And that's what we want our students and our children to always be ready for. And I think, you know, last night, you know, we heard, you know, one of the greatest gifts and teachings that a student had from their teacher. I think that's resonating with me right now. And Josh, I don't mean to embarrass you, but it was what Jana, a student said about Jana, was the greatest gift and teaching was to show them how to fail and then how to move on. Right. So when we look at something, when we examine something, when we take a real hard look and reflect, that just means we're being brave and ready for a next step. And it's so wonderful when, as a community, we're doing it together.
Yep.
The only thing I will top on to that is, I think the structures that Mike has shown us with athletics might be something we want to now maybe look at for our arts and our music program, and maybe put that in the parking lot for our next area of study, sort of like we can
You just
have
read my mind, Iris.
our next tri-state will be on, you know, we did athletics this year, and then our next tri-state could be, so that we have those three branches where anyone walking in from the community, anyone coming to visit the school knows Croton Harmon is an athletic, academic, artistic. It's a school district where every child, whole child, can be met. Parking lot, Tracy.
I gotcha. So we're taking our next step, and we look forward to the process. I thank Mike for traveling this journey with you know, our administrative team, and as we go through our process. Is there anything else the board wanted to share relative to that?
I have a question, and it's about transformational leadership, transformational coaching. You know, I already looked up Joe Ehrman's website and everything, but how do, since we are not leading athletics. The Board of Ed doesn't really lead athletics, but how do we get an understanding of that so that we know, what we're even looking for in a person who can instill that in the district, in the athletics?
That question, Brian, yes, me?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think, well, first of all, if you're anyone that's interested, I can give it to you tomorrow. I have a copy of Joe Ehrman's book, which if you're interested in reading, it's an interesting book. I could also give you a summarization of some of the key points that you look for in some kind of transformational coach or transformational leader. Like a brief summary, if that's something that helps. I mean, I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but is that something you're looking for, Brian?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, because there will be an interview process, right, for an AD, and there will be a bunch of things that happen before it gets to the board, but we kind of need to understand what that means and what those qualities actually are. So yeah, that information would be helpful.
Okay.
That's a great question,
that.
Brian. It really is.
I'm good at
I
questions.
can do that.
And we'll be doing the same, Brian, as we work. I've had the good fortune of meeting with Mike, throughout this entire year, and we've been talking about transformational leadership throughout the year. But we'll be doing the same thing so that we are reflecting on the key tenets of that as we are interviewing and looking for evidence of those tenets in the interview process. And so you raise a really good point.
I'm sorry, there was something else. Policies, one of the things that we do. Will you be able to make recommendations to the board as to any policies that you think we need to update, improve, revisit? And what brought to my mind was the athletic placement process.
Yes.
Will all of that be incorporated into this transformational leadership process that we're going to endeavor?
Yeah, some of what you speak, like some of the policies is, I wanted to kind of send you some separate recommendations on things to consider in terms of how we do a couple of the athletic policies, actual board policies. I mean, a lot of times people use the word policy, but it's not really a policy, it's a procedure. But I'm talking about a couple of board policies that suggestions or thoughts for conversation for the board to talk about.
So the answer was yes, yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
I spend a lot of time with Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay, all right.
Well, thank you very much, Mike, for coming to speak to us tonight. And thank you for bringing the great work of the Athletic Study Council. I appreciate all of the community members and staff and who worked with you to put this together. So I think it was really comprehensive and giving us a good direction. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
That concludes our report then, Sarah.
Wonderful. All right, then. So now we will now move into the closing of the meeting, and the board will be going into executive session, and we expect that we will adjourn immediately following executive session. So we will conclude our live streaming for any of our community members who are joining us via live stream in a moment once I move our next action. So thank you for joining us tonight. Recommended action that the Board of Education enters into executive session to discuss the employment of a particular person or persons and to discuss contract negotiations with the ATU, CTA, CSEA custodial, and CSEA clerical bargaining units.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you in executive session.
Thank you, Mike.